Hi, everyone. So excited to be here today. If it's 11 a.m. Eastern Time, it's the Hour of Empower live stream. I'm so blessed and happy to have Jeff Lackey with us today. Jeff's been with us prior weeks and is really bringing a tremendous amount of value to the show, to the audience, and especially even to me. So win-win-win right there. With that said, today's word of the day is sincerity. Want to get our arms and our minds wrapped around that. Love to hear what your latest thoughts on that. Also, chat's open. Renadeb's always here first, always says the same thing first. Thank you, Renadeb. There's something to consistency that everybody starts to recognize. With that, I'll turn it over to Jeff. Jeff can bring us up to date on latest and greatest and what his initial take on sincerity is. Jeff?
Okay, so I would love to get from our audience, and all the viewers out there. I said, this is not a spectator sport. This isn't just a professor sitting in front of a screen talking at you. I want to get from you if anybody might know what the hidden meaning of sincerity actually is. So love to start off with that. Before we get started, I'd hate to give away the whole thing right at the front and then have people log off after 30 seconds. We got to have we got to build up some suspension here, So talk to me. What do we think sincerity is from the audience? I mean, you think of things like authenticity. You think of things like, but is that really what sincerity means? Yeah. So do we have any feedback from the audience? I'm not sure if I'm seeing it.
Well, sometimes there's a lag, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Aired, and I think that would have an impact on comments. But to kind of layer on to sincerity,
What do you think? What do you think, Bob? What do you think what do you think that sincerity means from your perspective? Yeah.
Well, I believe sincerity can also be paired with simplicity.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're sincere, you're more covered in that area, right? Because sincerity is not a mood; it's an expression. It's a way of valuing your communication. And I think with sincerity, there's definitely the emotional part to it, right? How sincere did he sound or she sound? Did you really believe, and that's the beauty of live shows is you can't hide your initial expression when something kind of appeals to you or gets your attention, but how you respond in speech should match up with your initial expression. And when people try to change that, that's where insincerity starts to come in. So how pure are you in your feeling that you express, both facially or physically? And then how does that get supported by your words? Because, the sincerity is also the empathy, right? I really, really care about what's going on here, or it's important to me that, you understand and appreciate exactly what's going on. I want to be sincere. In a way, I just want to be honest. And hey, there's something more to it than a fact or a figure. There's a feeling. I had to share this with you because with that, before we turn it right back, Leslie's here. Leslie's really been an anchor for a lot of people and a foundation for others. She promotes all the shows, podcasts. She has Think and Grow Rich on Fridays. Her live stream. She has Mind Over Matter on Mondays. She's collaborating with all kinds of people. She has a 12-week boot camp or workshop starting pretty soon. So, something is always done. Great gal. And she'll be on actually tomorrow with Catherine Chadwick, and Leslie seems to be settling into Saturday. So it's really nice to have anchors that bring more to the show based on the more they're doing before the show, right? So it's nice to have 6 more days of Leslie's podcast or live stream, because we all learn together in that sense. Leslie says, what's the topic? I'm a little late. Sincerity is today's word of the day. Connection today. Well, I think that was something. Sincerity is good if it's authentic. Yeah, I think that's true. Well, you can't be anything but authentic if you're going to be sincere, right? Because you've just, put up a speed bump before you even start talking. If you're not, it blew up at 10 a.m., so I'm doing it at noon today. Okay, well, great. Well, it's nice to share things. And with that, Jeff, it looks like a great sincere start.
We're off to the races. So I'm gonna lay on you what the definition of sincerity is. Okay. Now hold on. You gotta pay attention. Everybody focus here. Without wax. So you're sitting there. I know all of you are sitting there nodding your head going, what in the world does that mean? What? Without wax? Since, like, how does that, like, where did that come from? Well, it comes actually from the Latin. Sin means without, and cesare means wax. And so it's a hail back to Roman and even Greek times when they would make pottery. And pottery would be formed. Now, if anybody knows anything about making pottery, like once you fire it up, sometimes it cracks. Sometimes it chips, it cracks. Lots of things happen in the process of making pottery. And they didn't really want to throw that stuff out, especially the pottery maker. So what they would do is they would cover it up with wax and they'd glaze over it and try to make it look like it was perfect. Which is all well and good as long as it's just a decorative piece, right? But you decide to put that piece in the hot sun and you throw some water in it, and like all of a sudden you got water all over you, and you're sitting there going, well, that was a very insincere piece. That thing had lots of wax in it, right? And so as you think about sincerity, it's showing your cracks. It's being open about your flaws, right? And if it's without wax and it has no flaws, which none of us do, by the way, we all have some flaws, different ones, right? You're willing to show those so that whoever is about to use hey, this is great as decorative, but I wouldn't suggest drinking out of it. You might not want to put this one in the fire because it might blow up on you, right? So the other thing that's interesting about sincerity is anything the wax, what they used to do to figure out if a pot was with wax, they would hold it up to the sun. And you can even see in Middle Eastern cultures today, when they go to buy something on the street, sometimes you will actually see people holding things up. And you'll be like, why are they holding it up? They're actually looking to see if they can see any light through the crack in that pot, to see if it was glazed or waxed over. And so as you hold things up to the light, you can sometimes see through them. So in sincerity, you can see through. Second is that it doesn't hold up well under temperatures, hot temperatures. So in the heat, it does not hold up well, right? And be careful if you want if you're dealing with somebody who's full of cracks, you might not want to drink water out of them, So
Well, I think that's an amazing historical reference. While you were talking, I was thinking the opposite of sincere is embellish. Right? I mean, and a lot of times, to your point, with wax, there's a saying, well, they waxed over that. Right? They didn't, if someone was given a speech and someone asked them a question, and pretty soon they just, got through it real quick and just didn't even spend a lot of time with it. The other thing about sincerity, you have to put it in a time frame of short-term or long-term, right? If you're buying, let's say, a newspaper, it's a transaction. Sincerity doesn't have any really big role in just a simple exchange, right? Because you don't spend a lot of time explaining to the clerk or whatever. On the other side, when you look at it, on a long-term basis, everybody knows what you may not know yourself, right? What you said last time isn't following up with what you're saying today, or forgetfulness, selective forgetfulness. It's like, hey, that wasn't very sincere. And a lot of times, you then add disingenuous, right? So, yes or no is cool, but hey, what was the intent there? One says, right? Someone tried to mask something over, wax something over. What were they hiding? And after a while, it's not even what they're hiding. Why were they hiding? And why did they approach me with that strategy? And you know what it says? They have unqualified themselves for you.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a simple, you don't have to become Perry Mason or be a detective. It's like, wow, this is how someone goes to market. This is how someone shows up. And sure, if you had a lifetime and nothing but them to worry about, you could probably help them out, but you want to find people that have the highest integrity naturally, right?
Yes.
It's just the way they are. It's not like, okay, today I'm going to be Batman or Robin, it's really going to be, I want to share who I've become with people, not what I do for people or with people. But that's what people admire is how you project, and then and quality, high integrity, mostly importantly, confident people.
Right.
Love to take it to the highest level of integrity and sincerity. They even go beyond, which is, hey, is there anything else I can add? Is there anything you don't know that I can, share with you? So it's like open up the vault and say, I love to give you the best, the greatest, the fastest I can do it. And, that puts the ball back in your court because that person has definitely qualified themselves. Yeah. Can you rise to that level with them to stay at that level?
That's right.
They're the Go ahead.
That's exactly it. So that's a great point. One of the things, so imagine that you're a market person and you're selling pots, right? And actually you have a very high quality standard for yourself. I'd say 90% of all your pots don't have any cracks. They're as close to flawless as they can be. They don't have cracks. They don't have chips. They're perfect. And you put these out, but you do have some that you still want to sell that do have the cracks. But what if you put those off to the side and say, these are full of wax. They're not good for drinking. Don't put them in a hot place. They're decorative only. Decorative and for cool places. And we've made them pretty. We put wax in them to make them beautiful. So they're great decoration pieces, but not for drinking. These other ones can store, drink. They're very high utility. Like, it's okay if you tell people about the wax that you're putting into something, right? Or if you're telling people about the cracks or the flaws that you have, and you say, listen, one of my big flaws, and I'll tell you, now this might be a surprise, I tend to talk a lot. Surprise, right? And so, like, I make a joke out of it. Like, hey, sometimes I talk too much. And I still remember, one of my leaders one time in the middle of a board meeting texted me STFU, right? And I'm like, whoa, hey, wow. And I'm like, okay, got it. I can't back out of this sentence fast enough. But I had the conversation. I said, listen, to my leader, I said, listen, I appreciate the feedback. A kinder, gentler version of that would have been appreciated, but that got through. And he goes, no, actually what you were saying up to that point was perfect, but I needed you to stop right then and not go any further, because I knew wherever you might go just would take away from whatever you had just said. And I said,
it's so true, because sometimes, and I'm learning that with this show, is the practice should be speak more often with less time.
Yes.
Because everybody's going to get the same time. And I think what people don't understand is some people at the superficial is just fine with them, maybe one layer down. But when someone starts drilling or adding 3 wonderful points, and now you got to choose which one, right? When you could have had a shot at each one of them, as they, so it's like, when does a paragraph end? But moving back to sincerity, you know, there is an element to authenticity and integrity and all the wonderful qualities we talk about.
Right.
But how do you raise the level of conversation where everybody can be sincere? And one thing I think, to your point, which is really cool, and it came to mind, is as long as you have full disclosure, right? As long as you know, that's what sincere is. It's not perfect. Like, hey, this is perfect and it's sincere. Once you can say, hey, these are, you know, blemished goods, you know, just like if you look at the art market, there's an original and then there's all those copies, right? You know, those signed copies. So someone's going to get the original, someone's going to get the copies, but knowing they got a copy made it sincere in the context of copy. So you can have two things that could contrast and compete. Hey, this is a phony, this is an original, but they're equal when you say, here's the phony pile, here's the original pile.
Right.
It's only insincere when you make the phony look like or sound like the original. But, you know, you're playing a shell game with yourself, because first of all, you need a great memory. Second of all, it takes so much effort to disguise something, then expose something. And you know what it is? That's what it is. It's an it. It's not you. When you connect yourself with an it and change the it, you're actually taking a downward step for yourself. And you know, you want pride. You know, things go, things come, things win, things lose. But the person you always admire is the person who fought the good fight. You know, the person that left a place better than they found it. You know, that saying, leave the log pile bigger than you found it. What log do you add to everybody's pile every day as you meet them? And so I think a giving sincerity is one step above an asking sincerity, or even a teaching sincerity. So at what level of sincerity do you want to establish yourself? Because you will rise other people to saying, hey, that's how we work around here, right? We're a bunch of sincere people, and we value sincerity, and we also protect it. That's right? As if it's safe, if it's a learning experience, everything, if everybody's intentions were in the right place. And that's the benefit of sharing it, is like one possible mistake is 6 opportunities for someone to learn without having to make the mistake. And now your mistake was value to them, and you expressing it, right, was your way of saying, hey, I'm not happy with it, but let me share everything that went into it. Because, you know, if you want to judge somebody, the question you got to ask yourself, have you ever made a mistake? And if the answer is yes, could that ever happen again? And that could be exactly where you're at. And plus, how you judge is how you're judged. How you forgive is how you're forgiven. And I think that's so important in a workplace, not to make it work, but to make it work on ourselves together. Right? Add to it. So let me run through the names. Awesome. I love to see the people. Renadeb's here. Leslie's here. I went over most of these comments. Oh, here's a wonderful lady, Maria Edgington. So happy to have you.
Hey, Mariah.
You know, we're gaining all kinds of attention and interest because we're trying to keep the conversation at a much higher level of consciousness, but more importantly, intention, purpose. I think that's what's lacking. Once you have your intention, once you have your purpose, you want to be sincere, right? You just want to keep moving forward on that level. Leslie, without wax, maybe. Fancy meeting you here. See, meet and greet. Been here lately. Christine's a lovely lady, finishing her master's degree, got a nice C-level position, got a great family. How she does it, I don't know. Christine, being sincere is not having a hidden agenda. Instinctively, we have a sense of when someone is being sincere or not. I love my pets because of their sincerity. So smart. Beverly's here. Beverly's our Tuesday gal. Unbelievable. She's got her podcast, and that's expanding and growing. She's a therapist and coach up in Montreal. So can't thank you all enough. So Jeff, a lot going on here with sincerity.
So let's take this pot example one more time. I'm going to continue to go at it because I think there's a lot to unpack in the analogy. So imagine that you have these pots. Now you've separated them out. First, you have to be aware enough to know which ones have cracks and which ones are flawed and which ones aren't. Okay. So first, sincerity actually begins with a little introspection. You have to know a little bit about yourself, and you have to be able to take some feedback about how others perceive you as well as what you know about yourself, right? And you have to blend those two together to create sincerity. So first of all, you have to know which pots have cracks, which ones have chips, and which ones don't. And just because they have chips and cracks don't mean that they're less valuable. So that's the part that I want to get across. If you take and you take them and say, hey, this is not for drinking, this isn't for storage, but this is for decoration only. And then you paint it and you say, we're turning this into some of our works of art. Actually, those pots may sell for a lot more and be considered a lot higher value, depending on your artistic skills and how much that artistic skill is valued by the marketplace. They may go, wow, that is a friend of mine gave me a vase at a church, and he goes, I make these, I paint these. He just buys the vases, but then he hand paints them himself. He goes, and I sell them. He goes, it's my retirement. This is what I do for fun, and it helps me provide a little bit of funds for retirement. It was, Monet would have been proud of this vase. It was gorgeous. And I'm like, wow, that's going to be something we keep forever. And it's beautiful. Like if you have that type of a pot, even though it's cracked, even though it doesn't hold a lot of water, maybe you don't put it out in the sun, you say, actually, I want that as a focus of my whole house, right? My whole house can be designed around this piece. There's value in things that are even broken or cracked. It's just how we position them, and that we're sincere about the fact that, what they can be used for and what they can't be. What a shame it would be if you put that beautiful piece out in the sun and it just, came apart. You'd be so disappointed. But if you're warned, don't put it in the heat, don't put it out in the sun, don't put it where it can't be heard. You'd be like, if you did do something like that, you'd be like, well, that's kind of my own fault. They warned me not to. And it's really too bad. But that was on me, not on them. They told me not to. See, there's value in being sincere because your integrity, you may point out integrity is important. Trust is important, and those are the things that we value in a relationship. It's not the fact that we're flawless or without cracks. It's that we're being honest about the things where we are flawed, and that we also, in trusting ourselves with our flaws with others, then they're more willing to share their flaws with us. And then therein creates this communication that says, yeah, we're all flawed. We're okay. And now we know each other's flaws. We're not going to go doing something like, hey, if I happen to have a friend who has a problem with, say, alcohol or something, like I'm not going to take them to a bar. Mm-hmm. Right. We're going to hang out at the house and we're going to be free of alcohol, right? We're going to have lots of food and hang out and do fun things, right? You don't put people in a position where it exposes their cracks. But if you don't know their cracks, well, you might inadvertently do things that would do stuff to them. So sincerity is about not just opening up for yourself, but it's allowing others to open up to you. Because they feel more you said the word confident. I love that. They feel more confident. They feel more at ease with you because they know, you're not perfect. They're not perfect. We're all not perfect. Let's just talk about it and get past all that. And let's get on to the real stuff, which is more important and more fun to talk about anyhow. That's really the thinking that I had when I was studying the word sincerity.
Well, you bring so many good points to the surface. One of them is one doesn't have to be absolute, right? So there's a degree of sincerity. There's a point where if you saw some lady wearing the ugliest hat in the world, sincerity would be, do you understand this is, but again, here's what will dissuade even that unfiltered person.
Right.
It is a imperfection can be an attraction to certain people. I mean, if you look at fashion, that's a ideal example. People are selling ripped up jeans, right? For unbelievable prices, depending on who ripped them and what the label is. And 20, 30 years ago, somebody would say, change those clothes. I mean, you can't walk out with holes in everything you're wearing. I mean, so, it's what you believe is a confident level of sincerity for yourself. Right. And you don't want to have an imbalance because sincerity groups with so many other important words. But I think the benefit is look at it in more of a, how often are you in a sincerity position? How many conversations are you going to have that are going to require sincerity? Not that many, right? I mean, not the important, meaningful ones, maybe 2, 3, 4. And if you want to add some family and friends, you can get some more of that. So when you're in that moment, and it's not to show how open and vulnerable and sharing you are, it's to make it comfortable to say, hey, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. How many people start with that? Hey, let's just get to the point, or I'm going to just put, when I did turnarounds and restructurings, I'd always have resolution meetings. And the creditors would show up at an airport in Chicago and we'd spend it for a day. And I would always start like, this is an open kimono meeting.
Yeah.
Right? I'm putting it all out there. There ain't nothing left to the imagination. And it is what it is. And this is what we got to work from, instead of the song and dance and everything else. Because one thing I learned about professionals, they just want to know what they're dealing with.
That's right.
Right? They don't need you to tell how big it is, how bad it is, how it's going to be okay. And, when you sit down at a table, shoulder to shoulder as equals on that table, you may have different interests. I mean, certain creditors wanted something that other creditors didn't. And it was all a juggling act. But if you didn't have that trust, you had nothing, because once there was an agreement, that was just the beginning. Right now, you got to make regular payments. Now you got to bring some investor in. Now you got to do this, and we'll do that. And if you look at it, everybody is wondering where they invest their time and with who, and then how do they spend that time, right? And how much do you plan to make someone's hour with you the special hour from the way other people are treated? Because you're competing with the world. You're not looking, you can't look at it your lens like, hey, this is what I'm into. And that's what a lot of people, I need to get here. How do I get there? I'm going to use this person, take advantage of that, sneak in over there. And all they did was create a tool chest of stuff that I wouldn't want associated with me. And you know what it says? Weren't you good enough just to do it right?
That's right.
I mean, how long would it have taken for another 10 minutes, for another this or whatever, to get it tight, get it right, and walk away feeling, man, I did the best I could, and everybody saw it. how they respond, hey, that's on them. So, I think that's so important. Jeff, what's your thoughts?
So, Don, one of the things that you said was that, it's not about sharing all your faults all the time. I thought that was brilliant. Sincerity is contextual, right? You don't have to go in and unleash all your baggage to somebody. Nobody wants to be, as my kids would call it, trauma dumped, right? Nobody wants that. They're not ready for it. They're not in that place where they can even accept it. They're not sure what they would do with it if you gave them all your faults, right? But hey, if you're talking about something that is relevant to a circumstance and you have something that is a weakness or a strength, right? You talk about those things, and you talk about your strengths as well as your weaknesses as it's relevant to the context of that thing. To your point, as you're doing a merger or acquisition or what have you, the open kimono meeting. This is where you say, hey, this is relevant, right? We need to know about you and you need to know about us. Because if we decide to come together as two organizations, we need to be able to integrate and come together and be successful. Otherwise, both of us get hurt, and there's nothing good comes up. So share the stuff that's relevant to this combination of two companies. You don't have to tell them about, like, hey, you had this happen in your childhood, or you had a great father, or you had a terrible mother, or whatever you had, right? That stuff's not relevant. But what's relevant is, like, hey, what's the culture of the business? What are the financials of the business? What are the customers? Where are the customers at? Do we have key employees that are going to stay, or are they going to go? Right? If there's something that comes again, like, that stuff's relevant. Talk about the stuff that's relevant, and be open about those. Not being afraid of the consequences, because then the sincerity is returned. I think that's the important part. Like, once you've been sincere, you're hoping that sincerity is returned back to you. And that's part of the beauty of sincerity, is that people have a natural inclination to be sincere in return. Now, not everybody is. Some people take advantage. They're like, oh, what a putz, what a schmuck, right? For that 0.1% of people who act like that, I'll give them the day. They will take me to the cleaners, and I'll let them take me to the cleaners, because I'm going to play it to the 99.9% who don't do that, right? I'm going to allow myself to be exposed by those people who want to take advantage of me. Hopefully, I'll be smart enough to cut my losses as soon as I figure it out. But for the other 99 or 99.9%, that trust-based relationship is more valuable than anything, right? And it creates a friendship. I have people that I'm friends with, like, from 30, 40 years ago, 30 years ago in business, that were some of my first coworkers. I still call them up, and I'll say, hey, Andy, how you doing? Glenn, what's going on? Tony, how's it going? Like, we talk, and we're like, oh, yeah, as though it was yesterday, right? And we talk about old times and laugh. Well, part of it is because we had a good friendship, and friendship is based on the fact that people know a little bit about you. So I'll tell you a little story. I was first off in executive recruiting. I was poor as the day is long, right? So just I was still actually was in graduate school, but I was and I had this 1984 Chevy Impala with 280,000 miles on it. And for some reason or another, we must have been throwing a bunch of stuff in the trunk, and a yellow pages had gotten caught in between the trunk and this, and had gotten shut into it. And I didn't notice it, and I drove into work, and then Glenn Richards, the VP, came out. He goes, what's going on with that yellow pages in your trunk? What you think, oh, I need to go to a restaurant here. As you're, like, driving down the road, what's going on? To this day, Glenn, hassles me about that yellow pages in my trunk, right? He knows there was a flaw there, like, or the hoagie that I was a little bit too interested in eating during a client meeting. I was like 24 years old. Of course, I was hungry, but he still gives me crap about that. But that's the fun. I mean, actually, the cracks are actually more interesting than the perfect version, because that's who we are. And that's the beauty of sincerity, is that once you discover that's the best part of being who you are, it's not the worst part, then you can actually be more comfortable in your sincerity.
Well, absolutely. And, again, what comes to mind as I'm listening to what you're saying is something you can dig a little deeper and really maybe get a lot of value out of, is what do you know? Because you're right, sincerity is all about context, right? Yeah. So let's talk about a relationship. Let's say it's your anniversary, right? And let's say the person you're with, what exactly they want you to say or they want to hear from you, right? And you also know deep inside yourself something you've been wanting to say for so long, but haven't had the opportunity or the context or the courage. And when you can match those two up, right? Now you've taken something that's buried beneath both of you. Someone's waiting to hear that, for whatever reason. It could be a thank you, it could be an apology, it could be a compliment. Yes. I mean, some people say you've never ever mentioned something. I wear these beautiful clothes. I never hear a comment. I cook these wonderful meals. I never hear how special. I mean, because people take it for granted, and therefore they take people for granted. And an insincerity is a take for granted, right? You could have been more clear. You could have been more sweet. You could have been more something, but you just chose to cover your base, just cover, paid your due, and how do we ever going to take it further if all we're going to do is all we have to do instead of what we could be doing and could be doing for the other person? So the sincerity is maybe wiping any guilt away from your slate to say, I was totally open, shared everything. But what was it they wanted to be shared? Right? All you understood was you, and freeing yourself up and feeling like, hey, I have high integrity. But did you make that person feel like, well, high integrity is always matching or exceeding the foundation that you placed, right? When you come back to somebody, they're going to wonder, how much did you grow? By how much did you now complement what you already put in place? And the other thing is, with flaws and imperfections, they're only as important or as big as you allow them to be. Because when someone says, hey, I don't think you're very funny, and you could come back and I say, you kidding me? I mean, you're the first person ever to tell me that in my life. I can't believe it, but that's cool, right? One person, they have to show up and you're it. Pretty soon you're going to think, maybe I made a mistake, or hey, it didn't nick him at all. It didn't take him off his game. It's only when you exchange what you know to be true with somebody you don't even know to be true, and all of a sudden it makes you question. I mean, if I told you it was Saturday today, you wouldn't even be affected by it, right? Unless you come up with, how do you figure that out without adding something that I don't know about, or just minimizing something. And I think at a certain point, if you want to encourage sincerity, you have to call out something and say, without being disrespectful. Because once you back somebody in a corner or you disrespect them, it's never going to be a good conversation from there. It's either going to be a justification or it's going to could even turn into an argument. But it's really just being a little incredulous, without judgment. Like, I've never heard of that. Show me what you got. I mean, if this is true, this is huge. What do you got? And most of the time, well, I got an opinion. You ever hear someone give you a poll of one? Like, okay, you said it, now everything is going to change for that. It's let's do better than that, And also, when you end a conversation with a period, it doesn't give somebody a chance to jump into it. No. Right? So why not be an open end? And, the other thing would be curious. It's a lot easier to say, that's pretty interesting. I'd like to learn more about that. What do you got to share there? And then they got to take responsibility and accountability, because if you're not controlling at least your side of the conversation, you're going to be at a deficit that, someone's on top, someone's on the bottom, typically in most negotiations. Someone has some leverage, somebody has they got a time frame, other people don't, capital, whatever it is, you want to keep yourself on an even plane. So let me share what Beverly has to say. Everyone has chips and cracks. Thanks, Jeff. As the Kintsugi philosophy of life says, when there are cracks, that's how the lights get through. So true. And it's all perspective, too. Linda Coleman, what a wonderful lady. Morning, everyone. Hope it's been a great week. Sincere is a great word, so people will gain the trust in you to be part of. A sincere heart, sharing things with others to feel they can share. And love how Don has helped others find the sincerity. Yes. Well, Linda and everybody, and Linda's from a rural town, really traditional, has kids she's raised and grandkids, and done a lot to her organization she's involved in. And that's, at the end of the day, that would be something to put on someone's gravestone. He or she was really sincere. I mean, that's something it's a legacy. Like Jeff says, you run into people, something weird happens. I was just thinking about a time I had stores in Milwaukee at one point, the national chain of specialty retail stores. And I remember there was a place near the lake called Sally's, and it was just an unbelievable Italian restaurant. And I see, and they had a race there. Mario Andretti was sitting right next to us, And you look at life as how sincere is life when people are brought to you, experiences are right in front of you. How honest with yourself is like, hey, I'm not going to let this slip. Or, this time I'm with this person will be the only time. Right? How do I make it a special time? So Jeff, what's your new thought?
Well, I love that, and I love one of the things that you said is really defining the what you're sharing, the sincere thought in the context. One of your previous guests, Bob Berg, author of The Go-Giver, who I thought was amazing. His definition of value is the relative worth or desirability of the end result to the customer. But if you think about this in terms of a conversation, you think about what is the value of that conversation to the other person that you're sharing it with, right? What are they going to get out of this? Not what are you going to get out of it, but what are they going to get out of it? And I love the context that you put in there, Don, is this fact that you can, if you're worried more about that other person as you're sharing sincere information, you might not be so inclined to give a poll of 1, right? Right. But if out of concern, like if you see somebody who has a piece of fuzz in their hair, right? Or they have or the collar is all flipped up and weird, right? And you might just go up and say, hey, do you mind if it seems like your collar's out of place? Would it be okay if I fix it for you? They'd be like, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That's sincere. That actually takes a little. I mean, if you've ever done it, like there's a bit of nervousness whenever you go to help somebody, because you don't. A friend of mine and former leader, Kurt Fisher, was the CHRO of Corning and also of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? Wonderful guy, but I still remember I was in my late 20s, and he said, help is defined by the person who is receiving the help. Right? And so that always stuck with me, right? And to think, and that's why I always ask before I do something, before I pick fuzz off, or before I fix a collar, before I say something or do a thing, say, hey, do you mind if it seems like your collar might be misaligned. Do you mind if I help fix it for you? And they might, in some cases, they might say, no, I actually wanted it that way. Okay. That's great. Like I'm glad I asked, because I would have felt awful awkward trying to fix something that you actually didn't feel like was a problem. That was your personal statement about you. That's fine. And that is the sincerity portion of that, is being willing to do it from the value of the other person rather than just trying to improve your own circumstance. I love that, Don. That was. Like if you're listening to this on recording, you got to rewind the tape and go back to that part of what Don said, because that was worth the whole show. Yeah, that was worth the whole show. Thank you so much for teeing that up.
Well, that's so kind of you and generous. But what comes to mind is nothing I would have said I knew I was going to say before coming here, but only because of what you said, what the audience shared. All of a sudden, that idea elevated itself, right? And it was easy for me just to put the top of the ornament on the cake or whatever, when the cake was always presented to you. And I think, I've been involved in a lot of high-level organizational situations with some really great people, yes. Right? I mean, really accomplished, not just smart, but just good people. And that's when you get cooperation and collective behavior, because everybody respects each other. Everybody, I always found in negotiations, the more sophisticated the people you're working with, the easier it is to do anything.
Yeah.
Right? When they know exactly what you're saying because they've done it, and they actually know more So they know when you're crossing the line a little bit. But what I love about it, and to your point, Jeff, is if you can make more people successful, you'll be more successful. But here's the rub, and that's what most people don't appreciate about a show like this. It's the content, like Jeff says, when it's in the can at the end of the show, that will stand on its own for who knows when. And here's the thing. When you make someone feel you're looking out for them, like, your shoelaces are untied, and all of a sudden, like, hey, I don't even usually do that sometimes, right? Maybe I should do it more often, but here's the thing. Then they come home to their family and say, Jeff or Don, said my shoelaces were untied. That's really cool. I mean, whatever the action is, all of a sudden the family's like, wow, he cares about you. He took an interest in you. You're not some unknown number in that organization. When I passed the hall, I said hello to everybody. And if I passed them 5 times, I said, hey, Don, hey, Jeff, how's it going? I'm just passing them. We're not stopping any workflow. But it's like, let's encourage this around here. Let's be friends. Let's treat each other as good as we can, because you'll feel better. You'll learn how to treat people better. And without even knowing, treating people better is the answer to getting everything you want. You'll start seeing things happen, even if you don't know it. And you'll say, wow, this works. Now, how do I get better at this? Right? Everybody wants to get there. Most people don't know how. And when they learn how, they need someone to give them a hand. Empowerment is that if I tell Jeff, hey, there's a great conference next week in your town. I think it'd be great for you to go. Well, that's cool. But what if I said, hey, I'm going to be in town. Let me pick you up. We'll go together. Right? Then all Jeff has to say is, let me look at my calendar. But if I say, hey, you got to drive an hour, you got to pay that, you got to do this. If I say, hey, I'm going to take care of it. This is so good for you. I don't want you to miss it. Right? And all you've done is reinforce it. And what was it? If you're going, take somebody with you. If they can't afford it, say, hey, listen, I'll buy the ticket. You can't lose, right? Anytime someone says that, when they give you an extra slice of their pie, I mean, things like that, which you don't even think of, and they're so easy to do, so inexpensive. You took so much time to get to know this person, to connect with them, to see them. And then when you're with them, it's like, oh, what's going on? Betty's here. I'd love to know Betty's last name one day, but she is good with her pictures. I love that Egyptian model and those 2 teddy bears. And I think that's the thing, is you say thank you, tell them why. Right? Thank you for being such a really great host tonight. It really meant so much to us. Well, you ate, you drank, you socialized for 4 hours. You got 2 minutes to really leave with a sincere thank you and appreciation. And man, I've never seen it so nice, because you put context and perspective in their mind. Right? This is as good as a Van Gogh, like you say, when the gentleman gave you a vase. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm going to do another one. And not only am I going to do another one, I'm going to give an extra one next week. Yes. Who can I give 2 away to? That's the challenge, So Jeff, I mean, we're on a hot roll here.
So one of the things you just told me, that you met a guy, Jeff Batinas. Jeff is a friend of mine, a former coworker at CVS Health, and I have a little story. So Jeff, if you're listening, you can you can resonate with us. So we worked at CVS, and we worked for a gentleman. I won't mention his name, but Jeff worked for me and a couple layers down, and he actually happened to sit outside my office for a little bit, right? And as I'd be in first, and then this person would be in about the same time, and then Jeff would come along about the same time, and he'd always say hi to both of us. And one of the days, this person, who I'm not going to name, so I don't want to tarnish their reputation, said to me in his in his nice little way, I don't know why Jeff always feels the need to say hi to me every single morning. Like, what is his deal? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, obviously that must be a huge burden for you. He just looked at me like, what? And I was like, that must be so hard. And I just walked away. And probably, put my job at risk, but it didn't end up. He wasn't long for the organization much after that. But but the fact is that I look at people like that and I'm like, listen, you don't need to spread your unhappiness with everybody around you, right? Maybe absorb a little bit of their joy that they're trying to give you by saying hello in the morning, right? Take it in a little bit, right? And Jeff's a happy guy. He's a very nice guy. He's a very social individual. And I always appreciated Jeff. He's great, but he is being authentic. Well, and sincere. Well, this other person was too, but like he was doing it from a selfish place. He's being sincere from, why is this annoying me? Right? Instead of like trying to think about like, hey, what is Jeff trying, like help understand like the good intentions of the person who's talking to you. And I think about that a lot. It's like assuming good intentions for folks. The more open and honest you are, the more you're able to assume good intentions, because you can imagine what they might be, where they come from, as opposed to imagining the tormentors coming at you and the evil intentions, right, of everybody around you. Like, for better or for worse, people's mind naturally, if they don't understand something, they naturally go to a very dark place. And I found my job as a leader is to take them out of the dark and into the light. Like, hey, I get it. They might there's a 1% chance that they are absolutely the most evil person on earth. But let's play to the 99 for a second and see what the probability that they actually had good intentions. What might that good intention have been? Right? How could that have? And all of a sudden, once they start doing that, they go, "Oh, you're right." And when they talk with the person about whatever that situation was, they say, "Hey, I know you might have been intending this." I said, "But the impact, it kind of screwed things up for me." And you know what? That type of conversation, when you try to actually empathize with the person who you're talking with before you get in there, goes so much better. And they're like, yeah, that was my intent. And I am so sorry because looks like I screwed everything up, but I didn't mean to. And they go, oh, that's okay. I forgive you. Like, can you help me fix it though? Yeah. Let me do this and let me do that. And I'll do this. And guess what? Before long, they're best friends. Like they got this weird bond because they because now they get each other. And that part of sincerity is about creating bonds, and getting past this point of thinking that everybody's out to get you, and getting into a place of assuming good intentions for folks. So, oh, look at that. Jeff Patinas. I see him on there.
Well, yeah, I talked with him yesterday. I said, if you'll come to a show or two, I'll have you on a show. So anyways, glad to see Jeff here. And to your point, you make so many good points today, Jeff, is, you may be encountering that 1 in 100 who lives to take advantage of you. And if they spend that much time, they probably will. But here's the other element is, if you know somebody on a regular basis, consistency, and they do something that one time that they've never done the 99 other times. Like today, they're gloomy. Today, all of a sudden, they got a negative attitude. Well, in context, they're never like that. So this is fully understandable. But it's also, hey, I got to talk to that person, because you could actually say, man, everybody looks up to you for your positive attitude and your confidence. Is there something I can help you with? I thought today you're just like down in the dumps, and I'm just here to see what's going on for you, not, hey, get up and get positive, but if I can help you with something, because, I had a lot of people in customer service, and I said, customer service is our number one sales tool.
Yes.
Right? Because how you treat the person who felt they didn't get good treatment is your chance to hold our brand up, support our promise to everyone. And all we have to do is look at it in relationship to who isn't having problems, right? If you're a problem solver, all you're going to get is problems that day. If you're a customer service rep, all you're going to get is customer service issues. But 99% of people who go through the cash register never had an issue. You're seeing the 1%. And because it's only 1%, we want to take care of them, because bad customers talk 5 times more about their bad experience than good customers. And, at the end of the day, we factor that in. That's like shrinkage. We know that we're going to lose. We'll allocate the 1% to make everybody happy. My goal was, before you even talk to them, because our average sale was $70, so it wasn't like any one customer's issue. I said, just ask them, what's it going to take you to make you happy? And most times they'll probably tell you something you would have probably been happy to offer initially. But if you say, hey, what if I give you $10? They're going to say, what about 20? Right? But if you say, hey, what do you need to make you a happy customer? And whatever it takes, we're going to do it. You want to turn it in? A lot of times we'd say, we don't want it back. Destroy it in field, right? I mean, by the time you ship it back, and we're going to throw it away. And there was one more thing. In my earlier company, I raised some money, and on the board of directors was a professor from Boston University. And he was also the controller of B. Dalton Bookstores, which was a pretty important chain at the time. They're in all the malls. And he would fly in from Boston. And anyways, we toured the stores together. And initially, he went into one store and he said, bad checks get a $5 fee. Shoplifters are this. He said, this is the scariest place I've ever seen. Do you ever do any of that stuff? I said, no. He says, then you're hurting the 99% of people who aren't going to rip you off.
Yes.
Right? And the signs went down immediately, because you're thinking about your insecurity and then projecting it on the majority who aren't like that. And pretty soon you're taking the experience away. And the guys, like you say, who are going to beat you, they're going to get it. But how much that's going to be. And one thing I want to leave you with, because I know you've been in employment, there's been cheap help is the most expensive thing a business can have, and until you understand how you treat the people who treat the people, right? The customers first, the employees second, and everybody at the top is third. I was always bottom up, because without those two, just like our audience here, you can't. And, I used to tell people, I'm doing a lot of this stuff because I like it around me.
Yes.
When I hire you, I want to make sure you make my day feel better for being in it, and that's an intangible. And, you'll get less shrinkage, you'll get more honesty. And, when you give so much to someone who has gotten so little and deserves so much more, and you tell that person your past doesn't have to define your future. Right? It can be the launch of something brand new. And what I always looked in people was desire and passion and ability to be teachable. I didn't care. Actually, sometimes when they came from places, there was a disadvantage, because there are people, well, at that place, here's how we used to do things. And I'm like, well, you're here now, and that ain't there no more. So what happened? Anyways, we're coming up on top of the hour. I got a few more comments. Beverly says, the absolute truth, Donald, my super high income clients are the ones who want no nonsense. That's no time for that. They're totally sincere. That's how we get top results. No bull, love that. We cut to the chase. Betty says, appreciate the encouraging. Jeffrey's here. We talked about him. Thank you, Jeffrey. Betty comes back. Don't we have to factor if they are mellow? Well, I think you got to figure out, where's your attention being applied to what, and how much can you make a difference? One thing about zero, that's as low as it goes, right? But you never have a ceiling. So why not keep topping off something that's really growing and just managing the best you can what isn't? And all of a sudden, be flexible, be open. I always used to say, whatever works best goes next. I don't care who thought of it. I don't care what it used to be. I used to have companies come in and says, what you're asking for, we've never done in 100 years. Well, don't you think it's time to start? 100 years is a long time. I mean, they were driving buggies 100 years ago. So anyways, it's your ability to be sincere, help other people be sincere, and show them that why there's a benefit, not a sacrifice. Because most people say, if I'm sincere, I'm going to show them too much. They're going to take advantage of me. I'm going to show them the weak points. Well, I think that what Jeff said earlier, which makes sense, start fast with little.
Yes.
Right? I'd rather lend somebody $5 and never see him again than trust them. And one day I wasted 3 months getting to know him, and I gave him $100 and now I don't see him. When, hey, if you want to test it, here's $5, make me wrong, right? Because you'll get me on my way. and if that's how you're going to make a living, $5 at a time, that's a tough road. So you probably need some help. So with that said, Jeff, what's your final thoughts on this sincere show today?
Two things. One is respond to Betty. Awesome comment. Thank you so much. Don't let the 1% define you. Let the 99%. I think that was Don's point, was don't let them define the experience that you want others to have, because the 1%, that's their game anyhow. And if they let you define you, then they've won. The second thing is that I think the law of small bets really applies here, and you don't. Diversification strategy is really smart. The more you diversify, so law of small bets, and then allow the small bets that win, play them to a next larger bet, right? And continue to build on the things that work. In growing my little business, my teeny little business, after going into $320 billion companies, I go into like a solopreneur with some fractional team, right? I'm sitting there going, I made some not big bets, but I made some, couple $1,000 bets. And I was like, whoa, they didn't pay off. And I was like, no. I'm going to be making like $100 and $200 bets here, and $50 bets there, and 25, and maybe $300 bet over here. Like, I'm going to make lots of littler bets instead of these bigger. That was one of my first lessons. And I knew that, but then I was like, you get sucked into the excitement of, this will get me right. It never will, right? Let it prove out small. If they're not willing to and can't prove out small, then they won't be able to prove out big. So, make your small bets with the small ways, and those people who are willing and able to grow with you, they will. And that's going to be so much more fun for you anyhow, because the people that grow with you appreciate you more for who you are, and are willing to be part of whatever the thing is that you're building anyhow, which I love.
Well, that's perfect. And, if you can't keep adding to your investments as they start showing themselves, right? So this starting to perform, hey, we're going to put some more capital, more thought, but it's like a garden. You got to leave it alone at a certain point to let it organically, naturally blossom in its own time, right? Nature doesn't know your time frame, and it always maintains its own, right? Certain things you just shouldn't rush, and you can't rush. And I think that's being sincere with yourself, is like, do you take it out of the oven before it's baked because everybody's hungry? I mean, and I think in life, I believe there is no outcomes. There's only continuums. There is no stop sign and then start. You could slow down, you can reverse. But I think when you have control over everything you think, over everything you say, through everything you do, that's a lot of stuff you can adjust. And you should never be happy with what you had yesterday if you're able to do more today. I was listening to a tape, and I'll end it really quick. But it was someone who demonstrated. He took a guy, Muhammad Ali, and he said, I only counted the sit-ups once I had pain. I didn't count anything before that. And working through that always made me stronger. And I think you get to the point where you really got to force yourself to be a better person and to maintain it. But that's a wonderful challenge when you can achieve it. But also, again, take the time pressure off, take the money pressure off. you know, and that will be making you absolutely sincere to yourself. And that's a sincerity you can't afford to compromise. So with that said, I'll see you all tomorrow. Leslie Flowers, Catherine Chadwick, who's doing some amazing things, both of them. Come here, join the party. Actually, Sunday we got a great show. Enrique's coming back. And also he's coming back with Jackie, who was just here, Jackie Scully, who's just amazing. So it only gets better, and hopefully we're all getting better together. So thank you very much. Have a beautiful weekend. Be safe, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
You bet. Thank you, Jeff.